So it's been a very hard few days for the progressive movement, and we are all adjusting to this and trying to move on the best we can, and trying to see what the next step should be. One thing that I've been reflecting on a lot, and something that has deeply bothered me for weeks now, ever since I was down in South Carolina talking to a lot of black voters and canvassing with a lot of black voters is our turnout with and also our result with with the black vote in the black community as a whole and what it means for our movement and what we could have done, because it's something that shocked me to my core and it still does, because our movement and our platform is something that I still call to this day as the most pro black platform in American history. Because if you look at intersectionality and if you look at the policies that we advanced with the Bernie campaign, Medicare for all, eliminating medical debt. Black women had the highest medical debt. Black men and black women are more likely to go into medical bankruptcy. We had the lowest life expectancy as well, and one reason because we don't have preventative care like we should have. Lack of health care is a giant reason why heart disease, heart failure, and our standard of living is much lower than the other races as well. So that alone is why Bernie Sanders had the most pro-black platform. But we can keep going as well. Black men take out the most student loan debt. Black families take the most student loan debt because we had the least amount of wealth. Neoliberal capitalism has never helped us out. The black racial inequality gap grew under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So when I see black voters continue to reject democratic socialism, which MLK propped up and supported, and they supporting the same neoliberal capitalism system that crushed our communities, it's something that bothers me a lot. And I said it throughout my tweets because you guys saw when I was on the trail, when I was canvassing, talking to voters, I was telling you guys that um, I'm seeing great results because when I talk to people, it was super easy to sell our points and our arguments to these people. And the people I talked to and the people I engaged, as soon as I bring up healthcare, as soon as I bring up criminal justice reform, as soon as I bring up student loan debt, I will see these people, their eyes will light up, and they will, and they see, and there's something I enjoy about canvassing is that you talk to people who came from a similar background to your own or a different background, and you share ideas that they didn't think was possible before that they now are considering. So when I was in South Carolina and I was talking to people, I remember one voter in particular when I brought up Medicare for all and how it's a tax cut and how it will boost the economy and how it will cover everyone. Um, she was completely on board, and she was like she gonna tell her friends. So my main thing when I was in South Carolina, I wasn't trying to get anyone's hopes up. I was just telling people what I saw, and based on what I saw, like if my polling was accurate, man, we would have won South Carolina by like 20 points. And that doesn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense. I guess we missed the boomer population. According to exit polls, Jim Clyburn, his endorsement had a big impact, and that's another reason why I titled this video the way I do, because you got a lot of black leaders and a lot of the older boomers that really let us down, and I can't sugarcoat the way I'm feeling right now. They straight up let us down. Um, and right now, the main narrative people are running out is the black voters rejected Bernie Sanders. Well, this is an argument I made from day one, and exit polls show as well. Bernie Sanders, even in South Carolina, won the youth black vote. And Nevada, he won the black vote under 50. So it's a generational gap. It's not a racial gap. It never was. And honestly, I find the mainstream media, I find the liberal class who erase my identity as a young black progressive, I find that pretty upsetting and pretty annoying. And I'm seeing my identity constantly being erased um, by the left. So, another big point I want to make is this rejection by the black community is devastating because it seems like we have forgotten our revolutionary roots. So, black people in socialism has a very long history, and even that, I tell people all the time, I call myself a socialist just because of the way we brand ourselves, but at the end of the day, I'm supporting mixed economies, just like what you see in Scandinavia, where you have strong welfare policies. But I never cut the Overton window off to my left. So I'm all for working co ops and a lot of other great socialist ideas as well. But people who cut off the Overton window at their left, I don't agree with that. So one what had a big impact on me personally was MLK, um, the Poor People Campaign. I studied that way before I even discovered who Bernie Sanders was, and that had a large impact on my identity. And you had one of the first Black Harvard professors, Dr. Cornel West, who I saw during the Obama administration being a straight up soldier and criticizing Barack Obama for being a sellout neoliberal, and he was calling out the Black congressional caucus. So for years, I watched our black leaders sell out to neoliberal capitalism, taking a lot of money from big pharma and taking a lot of corporate cash. So I have been um, I listened to MLK and I've been on this path for a long time, and I didn't think I was gonna find a candidate like Bernie Sanders who really picked up the Poor People Campaign and what MLK stands for. So you see Bernie Sanders coming out with these strong platforms that MLK would have endorsed. Um, Medicare for all, ending the wars. MLK was a strong anti-imperialist. So I'm thinking, especially when I first discovered, I'm like, oh man, we found him. I know we've been stuck in the trap of with bad leaders, but I'm like, man, we finally got a chance to vote for a guy who actually stands for what our old revolutionary used to stand for. MLK, Malcolm X, W.B. Du Bois, Peter Clark, Fred Hampton. So we have a long history of these black revolutionary leaders who didn't um, prop up the status quo, who fought against the status quo, who demanded better for black families and black lives. So now we see black leaders who are endorsing a guy who wrote the crime bill, the guy who bailed the banks, the guy who supported Wall Street deregulation. This is the kind of guy who built the system that crumbled our communities. And not only that, he was a fucking segregationist. And he said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. So this guy is a racist. He's an alleged rapist. Um, and he has done nothing to help the black community. As I mentioned earlier, the racial income inequality grew under the Barack Obama and Joe Biden administration. And it's funny, whenever you bring up racial income inequality, you see liberals, that's where they get quiet real quick. It's almost like they really don't care about racial inequality, income inequality. So, and what you're seeing right now, this is relevant to even current events because the reason why I study history and the reason why I'm a big history buff is because um, history repeats itself. It teaches you how to proceed in current events going forward. Because if you caught off guard and you don't know how to handle these situations, you won't have a guiding principle on how to move forward. So you're supposed to study history, you study ideology, so you know how to make your own decisions moving forward. So, and what we've seen with the coronavirus outbreaks and what you've seen in the Barack Obama administration, Joe Biden administration, when the 2008 economy crash, you see black families are the ones who is hurt the most, right? The coronavirus, the percentage of victims compared to the population that black families are being taken by the coronavirus is absolutely insanity. Way higher than it's like 2 times higher than the racial breakdown for the black population. Um, Obviously, we're the one who lost the most amount of wealth during the Obama Biden administration during the Wall Street crash because they took away our homes. The only wealth that black families had was our homes, and they took that away, and that's why you saw our income crash during the Wall Street crash, and this mirrors history as well. This exactly mirrors history because during the Great Depression, you know who was hurt the worst by the Great Depression? Black families, obviously. So the unemployment rate for white America then was like 30%, something like that. It was crazy. Unemployment rate for black Americans was 50% in the Great Depression. We lost 2 times more wealth than white families during the Great Depression. Cause that's when the Negro workers started getting land, buying land as well, and you even heard W.D. Du Bois wrote about the have-nots and the black racial income inequality that was starting even in the 20s. But then that wealth was completely wiped out by the Great Depression. And this is something that I can kind of say freely now, while we're not in the campaign. Um, you never hear me prop up FDR because FDR was a racist. So sorry, he was never. This one I always disagree with. He was never really a good example of someone we could push because, for one, Americans suck at history. So bring up FDR. It sounds good, but it's not gonna get people to vote for you. And then FDR, a lot of his policies during the Great Depression left out black families, and this is something that black socialists were criticizing him back in the day for. They called his National Recovery Act, they called that the Negro Removal Act because it did nothing to help black families. It was means tested to death, and it got a lot of white people their wealth back, but the Negro family was ignored. And what does that remind you of? That reminds you of the bank bailouts in 2008, right? I told you, you study history because history repeats itself. And that's exactly what's happening. What happened in 2008? It was the bailouts you see then, and now you see the bailouts now with the coronavirus, with the Trump. It's a corporate coup. It was a corporate coup in 2008 that it was theft. It was theft of black wealth that transferred up to the top 1%. Now you've seen that now with the coronavirus protection package, corporate coup. That's what I call it. I'm not gonna use their talking points, right? So this is why I study history. This is why it's important to study history because we've seen during the Obama administration exactly what happened during FDR with the Negro Removal Act. So with that said, it's devastating that we see history constantly proving that neoliberal capitalism is not the right way to go with black families. But we are cursed. We are cursed to I don't know, maybe we got it's just the older generation, they just keep screwing us, man, because the black youth understands, man, but so many of the older black people forgot the revolutionary roots, and it's really disheartening.